Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to remove the instrument cluster. Some people talk about in their P71s where the instrument cluster mileage or the odometer blanks out, and you can send it off to have somebody fix that. So I'll show you just how easy it is to take the instrument cluster out. So the first thing you want to do is we're going to take off this center trim piece. Okay, all you got to do is go to the end of it and start pulling gently, and then it'll wiggle loose. There's some little spots that catch in here to keep it from falling all the way out, but then you just keep gently pulling and pulling and pulling, and it'll finally give way. So for this, you can unplug it if you want to, but you can get this out without taking this fully off. So you may have noticed this is a police interceptor, but why does it have wood grain on the steering wheel and buttons here and automatic climate control? It's because I'm weird and I like weird projects. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the other side, and we're going to pop off the trim on that side. So again, this side, you just reach in it, dig your fingers under there and pull out, and it's just going to come free there. This one, it probably will do you well to take it out. You just have to push these there's a little lever to push on the connectors, and it will allow you to disengage these connectors. It's actually a little bit easier with a flathead screwdriver, but I was able to fit my fingers in. The next thing you want to do is pop the headlight switch out, but do not disconnect it yet. Okay, so we're just going to reach in here and pry. A little pry tool, you can use a flathead screwdriver or anything like that, and pull it out. So don't disconnect it, because if you do, just show you real quick, it's going to set off the light warning. Okay, so leave that connected until we're ready to take this whole piece out. The next thing we want to do is start removing all the 7mm screws. There's a bunch all along the bottom here of these that's holding in this dash piece. So we're just going to back these out. They're all the same, so you don't have to organize them. Just put them in your little tray or wherever you want to keep them. 4 on this side. There's 2 over here. So there's 2 up here. And that's all of those. So now this piece is ready to come out. Once I get it to break free, that's when I'll pull the headlight switch off. So again, just gently pull on this stuff. It'll eventually come out. Okay. And you definitely want to be a little bit careful about it, because there's this part that goes across here. It's kind of easy to break. So not super easy, but it's easy enough. And so you just want to gently just kind of pull this out, flex it a little bit as you're pulling it out, and it'll eventually just pop free. Okay, so now that this whole thing's free, now we're just going to go ahead and unclip the headlight switch, fully remove this part. Okay, plug the headlight switch back in. Listen to that obnoxious noise. You can take out the radio for this. I don't want to, because it's kind of lodged in there. You really don't need to do it. You can do it without screwing around with the radio, because you can just kind of swing this out of the way, and then you see the rat's nest in there of wires. That way you don't have to disconnect anything. 05 plus cars with this steering column, you can just pop this top off. Okay. It just snaps in. On the older cars, it's screwed to the bottom half, so you have to take the whole thing off, unfortunately. All right, this part is where people like to mess up. There is a little tiny brown plastic thing right here, if you can see it. And this is what holds the little pulley for the shift indicator lever. Okay, and then it's tied onto a loop to this. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to remove this without breaking it. And they're very brittle because they're old. So this is a 5.5mm socket, so it's kind of a specialized size. If you don't have one, you should have one. I wouldn't try and do it without using the right tool in this, because you could very easily break this brown piece. And unfortunately, you can't get the brown piece by itself. You can still get this whole assembly, but they're pretty expensive and they're discontinued. So they're gonna be harder and harder to find. I think this whole assembly is like 50 bucks now at some point. and it's all it is just a little cable. So I just very gently unscrew this 5.5 millimeter. I'm going to take the ratchet back out because I've got it backed out enough, so I'm just going to use the socket. I highly recommend, if you don't have this socket, to get it, but two, get sockets that have magnets in them, because these screws like to drop down and surprise you, and then you got to spend 15 minutes finding a friggin' screw. All right, so here's the screw. Little tiny thing. It's the only one that's not a 7 millimeter or taken out, so you can just throw it in your bucket with the rest. All right, so to take this thing out, you're just gonna very gently slide it that way, okay? Once you get the screw out, and it's got a little rectangle in here that's just kind of holding it in place. So if you very gently push it like this to the side, it'll disengage, okay? And that's gonna loosen it enough for you to pull this loop off. So now this is completely disconnected, okay? And we didn't break it. It's easy not to break it, just as like it's easy to break it, okay? And then the last part for the instrument cluster, in terms of fasteners, we got 7 millimeters, 2 on each side. So we'll back those out. I'm trying to do this without holding the camera because it gets shaky. All right, back that out. Now the instrument cluster is free, but we're going to have to unplug it. So all you got to do is just pull it like this, and it's going to come out. If it's been sitting in there for a while, maybe it might give you a little bit of grief, but other than that, you really just have to slide it out. Okay. Now the 06 Plus instrument clusters only have one connector, and it's got a little lever on top of it. It's probably going to be hard to see, so I'll show you after I disconnect it here. Okay, so let's get the instrument cluster out of the way. This release right here, because this is like the connector's closed. Just do that, and you can push it back. It's easier, sometimes easier if you have a screwdriver, because these things are small and I have fat fingers. But that's how you disconnect it. So anyway, that's the whole disconnection procedure. I'm gonna get the other instrument cluster and we'll put it back together. Okay, so we have our police interceptor cluster. It's the same exact shape as the message center cluster. It's, you just push on here and then you latch that clip like that, okay? And now it's in, that's it. All right, so to push this in, I'm gonna rearrange it a little bit so I can get the top in first. And then there's two little like guide nubs that you can push up against, and it'll hold it in place like this until you can get the screws in. Okay, and when you put these in, snug only. We're not torquing a suspension here, so just snug only. Three. And there she is. So I forgot to mention, I probably should have done this while the instrument cluster was still out of the car, but this little brown piece, it has a wheel on it, and there's threads on this, and this is how you can adjust the position of the shift indicator cable. Feed it through. It's gonna be hard to see, I know, because my hand's in the way, but you feed the little loop through. Definitely should have done this with it out of the car, but it's not a big deal if you don't. Okay, and then you just got to line up these threads and then get it to catch. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this little loop. We'll get close for this one just so we can see it. Right here, there's a hook here, and this is what we have to get the loop onto. Okay, and if you mount the brown piece, you're not going to be able to stretch it over there because it won't get all the way over the hook, right? That's so it doesn't fall off. You can pull on the loop a little bit too. You'll see the shift indicator move on the instrument cluster, and then you just have to loop it over that little hook. Okay, and now we're set. And then here's that little rectangle I was talking about that sits into this mounting spot. So we're gonna push that back over, fit that into the little rectangle hole here. It can only go in one way. You can't screw it up. Okay, so I'm gonna grab our 5.5 millimeter. I like to use my socket and to get it started that way. You probably don't even need to put a ratchet on it. Just take your socket and drive it in. There's nothing to force here. It should sit into that little rectangle really easily. Okay? And then the screw, you'll know when it's done because it'll stop turning, and that's it. I don't have to put any more torque on that. Finger tight is just fine. This is the wire that goes over. This is the little brown piece right here. Okay, that's got the 5.5 millimeter screw in it. Okay. It just slides back in because remember we pushed it that way to get it out, so you just push it this way to get it back in. Okay, but make sure you have this loop wrapped around this hook first before you set this back. Okay, so then use your socket, your 5.5 millimeter, and thread that in there. Okay, now if this was off a little bit, we could adjust it, right? You see if when I pull on the lever, okay, but it's pretty firmly square and parked just because I did it about halfway down, but you can adjust it if you need to. All right, so now we just got to put everything back the opposite of where we got it. Okay. So if you got a rat's nest like I do, because you have an aftermarket radio, go ahead and stick that stuff in there. The one thing I like about this double din that I have is it's only double din in the front. It's only a single din in the back, so it's easier to tuck all that stuff in there. Okay, so again, just gently work this back into place. Okay. Tucking things as you go as necessary. So this thing, it'll eventually just fully push back into place. The only part where I'm going to pause is over here on the left side, so I can get the headlight switch. So I can do that now. It's going to yell at us. Okay, I'm not going to fit it yet. I just want to get everything in where it's supposed to be. And I try to do this as slowly as possible because I don't want to have to replace this, because this is actually a replacement. I broke the first one. That's what junkyards are good for. Seated here. Another thing that can happen sometimes is, one, if you're putting these back in and you kind of bend one of the little pins that goes in, it'll make it really hard to put it in. So that's why I say just go very slow, just push it gently as you work your way around. Okay. All right, put the headlight switch back in. Okay. Now we're going to put these 7 millimeters back in. Again, finger tight. Okay, I'm only driving these with this thing because I'm comfortable enough with it to not break anything. So what I'm doing here is there's little copper pieces that go on the back of these, and that's what the screws actually thread into. And sometimes they can move a little bit. Not a big deal. You just gotta get them to line back up. So all I did was I pushed the thread in, or the screw in part way, and then just kind of flexed it, pushed it this way until the copper backing lined up. Just till it's snug. Okay. Let's off our steering column back on. Okay. Again, you have to line this up with two things. There's a hazard light switch over here, and then you have to get the outside of the rubber boot for the shift column and the ignition. And then you just push in until you hear it click. Done. So we're gonna plug back in the pedal adjustment and then just line up the piece and just gently push it and it'll latch. The same thing over here. We just have to be kind of careful of the all these different pieces that stick out where it attaches into the dashboard, because you don't want to bend or break any of them. Okay, so that's lined up, and then you'll feel it kind of, it'll want to fit into place kind of once you get it lined up well, and then just kind of go just like how you went right to left, go left to right and push that in. And then there's a spot that you have to kind of finesse over there, so we'll do that last part. Once it's smooth along here, we're going to come into here, and there's a piece right at the end here, and it's got a little spot that it can kind of fit into. You just have to be careful about kind of pushing it in there, because you don't want to break this one. And then once you have that one in, the rest of them you can just push, and that's it, and we're all done. Now you have your instrument cluster swapped out, and hopefully you find yourself getting a working one, or you can be a weirdo like me and take the whole dash apart and do weird stuff like this. So, all right, well, that'll about do it for this one. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.